Well, it's 2 minutes after now, so let's go ahead and get started. Good morning, everybody. It's so great to see you all. Thank you for joining our roundtable today. And our topic for today was phrased as a question. So really, that's what I want to hear. I want to hear your questions and find out what BIO5 can be doing and what the university can be doing to help you create a successful grant proposal. But first, we have two folks here from Research Development Services, which is a fantastic group. They're just a truly amazing group of people inside Research Impact and Innovation who are here. And maybe I'll just let them talk a little bit more about the overall RDS mission as well as introduce themselves. Amy and Becca, I don't know which one of you wants to go first.
Well, Kim just popped on, so we'll make her talk about the overall mission since she walked into that one.
All right, good morning, everybody. I apologize, I had a little difficulty joining the Zoom this morning. So our unit is the Research Development Services unit. We are located within the Research Innovation Impact Office and support campus broadly in the development of extramural funding proposals. That includes funding for largely federal funding, but we also partner with our colleagues in the UA Foundation when there are opportunities that are foundation related, specifically foundations with solicitations, but we also help on the big asks over there. And then our unit is fairly broad. Now we have the proposal development side. We also have a corporate research side. So if you're interested in working with industry specifically on research engagements, either direct funded or as a partner in pursuing federal funding, we support that. We also have a global projects team, which works specifically on development projects abroad. So if there's an interest there, they would love to hear from you, especially I think many in the public health realm are well suited for that work. And then we also support defense offsets, which we could probably speak on that for a whole 2 other hours. But on that, I wanted to take time as Becca, I believe, introduced herself and Amy Jo. These are the two primary contacts within our unit for support in the biomedical health and life sciences. So I'll pass it over to them.
Thanks, Kim. I'll just jump in quick, Becca. Hi, I'm Amy Jo, and I'm an RDS associate, as Kim mentioned. And I started with the university just a year ago and was here just a few months, and then all of a sudden we were doing this whole pandemic thing. So it's been interesting. And but I came from research development for over 5 years at the university at Buffalo. And so I bring some of that experience and reviewing NIH proposals, providing feedback on aims and research strategies, and looking for the overall compliance and grantsmanship side of the proposals themselves. So nice to meet everybody.
Hi, everyone. I'm Becca Trishkin. I know Jennifer was sucking up to me a little bit because she sent me her program plan so late at night, but I just joined RDS actually right at the beginning of February last year, and then obviously COVID happened. And so then just because of my background, I got thrown into a lot of other roles here on campus regarding organizing and managing and coordinating research around COVID. But I work on a lot of different health proposals, a lot of NIH. I see some familiar faces, and I've worked with some of you before as well. And I also sit on a number of committees and advisory research committees over on your side of campus. So I sit on the College of Nursing, College of Public Health, the Aging Initiative. And so, yeah, so if you ever need any kind of proposal development help or strategy or anything, I did what Amy Jo said, and Amy Jo's being really humble. We work together really closely, and she's awesome. And she sees things that I don't see, and I see things that she doesn't see, which makes us a really powerful team. So happy to help you at any time. Thanks, Jennifer.
Great, thank you, thank you. And I just want to start off with a couple things that BIO5 can help you with, and then really I'd just like to open it up to questions, comments, needs, so that we can find out what needs you have, direct you to resources if we have those right now, and if we don't, to find out what you need and how we might be able to develop that capability in the future. So BIO5 is, usually an umbrella organization. So one of the first things we do is bring people together. So if you're looking for collaborators, I would be more than happy to help you. There's also a couple of university resources that you can use to help find expertise here on campus. The Elsevier Pure is still up. I think it is not completely updated as of this point in time, but I still find it useful. So that's
it's about 15 months old, Jennifer.
Yeah. So it's maybe somebody can do the URL, or Kim, if you think it's not worth even going to anymore, we can just drop that. And then Amy put up the K-map, which is what is going forward is going to be the way to find collaborators. And that's really kind of very interesting because you can put in the whole text of a proposal and it will come up with people that it thinks match. My experience is that all these types of things are sensitive and not very specific. So you'll end up with a list of 100 names and it may be a little bit hard to figure out who to contact next. So I think that's where, probably any of us, but for BIO5 members, please just come to me and I can, if I don't know the person, I probably know the person who knows the person. So we can get you hooked up with collaborators. So that's one thing, BIO5 as a convening organization can do. Another thing we can always do is write letters of support. So any members, if you want a letter of support for your proposal, we'd be happy to put that in there. And, in that the services that we provide, we can always call those out and basically say how we can help you with, with meeting rooms, with broadcasting the results of your research, with helping you put together a annual meeting or convening event that you want for it. Those are the types of things that BIO5 is always happy to do. We have extremely limited monetary support, so please don't everybody come asking for lots of money for your proposals. But under certain circumstances, there is some minor monetary support that we can provide as well, particularly if that's, say, in the idea of maybe we're sponsoring a seminar. You have a program that's coming up and you want to have a seminar series associated with it. That's the type of thing that we've supported in the past. In terms of administration, you all have, most of you, aside from the BIO5 faculty, have home departments. And so typically your individual investigator proposals go through your home department. That's just the way it works. BIO5 supports the BIO5 faculty, and also we do provide administrative support for very interdisciplinary projects for whom it makes a lot more sense for somebody outside of the college group to do that. And of course, the big example of that is Cyverse. So there was the massive NSF proposal that involved many different colleges and departments on campus. And NSF wanted to see that somebody larger than an individual department was administering that. So other things we've done in the past, high-end instrumentation proposals for equipment that was going into the facilities that are located in Keating or BSRL. We've supported some large program projects that involved many different people. So mostly your own departments and colleges will administer your proposals, but we can help there too. Kate, Sean, any of you, is there anything you want to add to that?
I think that was a beautiful summary.
Okay.
But we do stand ready to assist on anything that seems really interdisciplinary that needs maybe a more unbiased home.
Yeah, exactly. All right. But with that introduction, really, I think we're a small enough group that we can just go ahead and unmute and ask your questions. If it gets to be a little crazy, we can start asking people to put their questions in the chat and call on people. So any questions about support needed or things that you're thinking of doing in the future and don't know how to approach them?
Can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, Jennifer. So I've seen a couple of calls for program level grants, U grants from the NIH and P grants. How far in advance do we have to start organizing research, resources? Because part of the issue is that sometimes they come up and then the opening date, so they have an announcement, is about 30 days after. And I've seen that a couple times with the National Center for Advancing Translational Sciences. There's one that's coming out from NIDDK that's like a U grant, or they have a coordinating center, but then they want these clinical sites. So I work in the clinical domain. So how it's sort of hard to have that stuff teed up if the announcement just comes out. So how have people dealt with that in the past? Because I suspect, Jennifer, and other people who are involved in these sort of glue grants, what we used to call glue grants, you might have, you might be poised to submit. I met with Nirav when I first came in. There was a call at the National Center for Advancing Translational Sciences, and he said, okay, let's do this. But, moving it forward is sort of hard in those 30 days. So if anyone has experience with that. And then the other thing is I just want to make a shout out to Amelia Galatano. I haven't spoken with you, I think, since 1993. And I'm glad to see that you're at the university and on this call. So, okay, thank you.
Somebody at RDS want to take that question? Because I think there's a couple of answers embedded in there.
So I think this is a multi-part response, and I'll look to Becca and Amy Jo to help out and support. In terms of the large scale proposals, so the NIH generally recommends 8 to 9 months for a standard R01 in terms of preparation, right? And so I would argue that for something like a P or a U, you want to be having conversations with key collaborators at least that far in advance, even if there isn't a call out quite yet. And many of the large center style proposals do come out on a cycle. And so looking at when they were previously released would be beneficial. It takes, one of the things that we're seeing a lot these days is integration, especially integration among the cores and projects if it's a P, and also just in general on the U's integration. And that integration takes time and it takes conversation, and a number of you are incredibly busy. And so when you do try to start that integration after the solicitation comes out, it's that much more intense. So I'd like to turn to Amy Jo or Becca to compliment, because they're the ones that are really on the ground working in this space.
Amy Jo, do you want me to go first?
Yeah,
Or do you
sure.
wanna go
Yeah,
first?
just go ahead.
Yeah, so I understand your frustration, and we're seeing these really kind of unrealistic and not feasible turnaround time. So trust me, we share your frustration, because in fact, Amy Jo and I are working on a U54 right now that involves all 5 colleges of UAHS and the Cancer Center, and there was less than 3 months right before Christmas and starting from scratch, which is just unrealistic, right? So I share with you. So if if it has multiple due dates, right? If it has one and you see it, or it's coming out, and it just hasn't been released, but we have that kind of that notice that it's going to come out, start talking to your collaborators immediately, but also schedule a time with us too. Send it to us and say, hey, we're really interested in this, and get it on our calendar as soon as you can, so we can help you as much as we can, because right now it's just Amy Jo and myself, and so we're stretched across all of campus, but yeah, so just start talking to people, but also get commitments, because one of the things that I've seen, and Amy Jo can speak to this as well, but a lot of people will be excited for these big ones, right? The U's and the P's, and they're like, yeah, we're so excited, but then you need people to write it and organize it, and there's only so much we can do. We can help you coordinate, we can help you manage, we'll definitely do technical review, We can put templates together. We work really closely. If you're in UAHS, we work closely with Lauren Zajac, and they'll have their compliance checklist. You know, we try to have a really open line of communication. We can create shared boxes. For the really large ones, we try to control copy, but it just depends how much you want us to be involved as well and how much time that we have. So we're also finding that the templates are helpful only insofar as the people follow them and don't alter them. Style sheets on grants like that are huge, right? Because we can do our job more effectively, but earlier the better. Contact us, get us in the loop, get it on our calendar. I don't even care if you're getting something on my calendar 7-8 months in advance. That's cool. And then we can have regular meetings. If we need to have weekly meetings, we have weekly meetings as a group. If we need to meet individually regularly, that's okay too, but sooner the better. Amy Jo, go ahead, because I know you have a different viewpoint.
I just wanted to add too, sometimes with these, especially like the U54 that we're working on now, it is the first time that this has been presented as a solicitation. And some of the COVID RADx, sort of those rapid response proposals, they also have adjustments sometimes to the solicitation. Like for example, for the RADx, they required the data to be tagged in a sense. And however, there was some pushback from faculty on that and questions that were raised. So they actually changed their requirement on that. So especially with new solicitations, there can be changes, but obviously we can't do anything about the deadline. I think the collaborative part where you're contacting those people in advance and getting your letters in order and drafting those, we can help with some of those templates as well to get that process started. But yeah, having people agree to participate is important. So yeah.
And I would raise just one point from the department is, of course, as soon as you're looking at a solicitation, make sure you're letting your department person know so that they can get started on getting the boilerplate stuff together, start working on budgets for you, all of that kind of stuff. And they're also usually really good sources for, you know, helping with any number of the documents that are required and proofing with enough time for consistency of formatting and things like that. So
Thank you. Thanks.
Great, thanks. What other needs do you have? Maybe what seems to be the biggest hurdle to getting started?
Well, Jennifer, I don't have a question, but I'll just make a comment. We want to thank you for your leadership of BIO5. You've been fantastic. When I came here, you know, my goal was to build on the relationship with BIO5 and grow engineering's research portfolio around health sciences. We're pretty excited to get started with that. We just brought on our new Associate Dean for Research, Mark Van Dyke from Virginia Tech. He's a biomedical engineer. He's has a lab in BIO5. Him and I are both proud to be members of BIO5. So the bottom line is engineering's here to help you. And Jennifer, we just appreciate all that you do. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, David. I appreciate that. Yeah. So do you all have any difficulty finding solicitations, finding grant opportunities? Maybe, does that seem to be a problem?
So Jennifer, this is Chris Klombotsky in Phoenix. Hi.
Hi.
I'm a member. Nice to meet you all, and thanks for the warm welcome that you gave me. So I moved to Phoenix only 4 months ago from San Diego, and I'm the Associate Dean for Research at UARZona and also the Director of the Translational Cardiovascular Research Program. So it's in both of those roles, actually, that I guess I would be maximally engaged with this group. So I'm really happy to be part of the group and to know that it exists. In terms of call for proposals, you know, I don't know whether there's one answer fits all. that is, disseminating the important information is an important thing. And, you know, we get run listservs and we get those kind of very long emails. And I find our faculty sometimes say, you know, I don't really peruse those emails. So at least in terms of being in the research office, I try to keep my eye out for specific things that are available for faculty that I know have research focus in our area. I know our campus is a lot smaller than yours, but I think that so I encourage you to reach out to us, Jennifer, and any of you, if you come upon proposals that you think might be of interest to us. So that seems to me so far to have been the best, most fruitful way of getting real hand knowledge of what's coming up, is specific interactions instead of kind of long lists or going to the NIH website. So just I just wanted to introduce myself and then go ahead and address your point and your question.
So Chris, I wanted to highlight something that Amy Jo put in the chat, and that is the subscription that the University of Arizona has to Pivot, ProQuest service. And Pivot does allow for individual subscriptions to their site, and you can customize searches, save those searches, and they'll send out a weekly digest for those searches. And they only send you that if there's something new, which is a really nice feature, right? So you're not just getting repeat emails every Sunday night. I do think that, as Jennifer mentioned earlier, Pivot it's a tool, you know, and so there is some human effort that's required to go through those, but it does help reduce some of the noise that you get on the standard, you know, NIH emails that come out, or even our weekly newsletter that comes out. We use Pivot and have a curated list on those of interesting opportunities that we think campus would be interested in. But we are supporting, you know, all tenure eligible faculty, research scientists, and you know, everyone on campus essentially. So it is a broad list. And so one of the things that we suggest to everybody is that they obtain a Pivot account. It's free. Put in some curated searches for themselves and start receiving those. And it might cut down on some of the noise just a little bit. But I think, as you mentioned, Chris, the direct outreach is often the best solution in some of these cases.
Yeah, and just like multiple communication mechanisms seems to work well. And just before I know someone else wants to talk, just one quick thing is that, you know, I've only been here for 4 months, but I've seen some really rich interactions between Phoenix and Tucson campuses. In my area, it's the College of Medicine, but please consider us to, you know, in your future thoughts about research programs, et cetera. Kim and I have been involved already in several things, so she's been a great collaborator in that regard. And contact me directly if you have any questions. And like I say, we have engineering people, science people, so it doesn't have to be College of Medicine only. Thanks.
One of the things I just wanted to point out, Kim, is that I have scouts in my lab, students who were teaching grantsmanship, or that's probably not the right term, but people have asked me, my undergrads, about, you know, how they can learn about searching for grants and creating proposals. And so one of my students has been trained in Pivot, and, you know, she brings us these little pearls. I mean, that's part of her, you know, she's interested in doing this, and it may propel her forward, you know, in a career. She is a scientist, but, you know, you have to really understand this whole process. And so it might be a good thing also to train, if people have people in their lab, everyone benefits from this. So, and the joy of bringing a great funding opportunity forward is something that, you know, I've seen. So they're encouraged to do that.
Kim, is Dan going to do, so I had talked to our colleague Dan, and he's the one who runs the limited submissions, but I mentioned, we were talking a little bit before the break about Pivot, and I think he's offered Pivot trainings before and other people at this university, and he was seeing that there was a need. So Kim, do you know, does he have any Pivot trainings that are coming up on the radar this spring?
Generally, Dan does a workshop that's open to campus once a semester. And if you would like to have him come do training specifically for your department, he's happy to do that. Just let us know. We can also work with, I think on the health sciences side, there are some of the members of Lauren's Ajax team that are also trained in this space. And then the other individuals that you might want to consider talking to are the librarians. A number of the librarians, both on the health sciences side as well as in the main library, are trained within Pivot and have access to that and can help support your searches. I want to second what Dr. Sangiovanni said, and that is that students are excellent in this space. Dan actually has a couple of students that work on the newsletter, and they're the ones that actually curate and support this. So if your student wants to come work for us, we have an open position on Handshake right now. Little plug. But I think it's a great opportunity to get your students involved as well.
Great. I know another thing that we've been working on and are doing better with lately is getting boilerplate sections available that people can plug in. Blake, do you want to unmute and talk a little bit about what you've been putting in the chat?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't want to bother y'all, but so about a year ago, a little more than a year ago, Susan, who worked at the Data Science Institute and worked in BIO5, she started putting together kind of a cyber infrastructure list. And basically that's all of the training and computational resources that U of A faculty have access to. 99 point some percent of that is free and available to you. And it's part of the reason it is free is to put them into grants and make us more competitive. And it makes this kind of beautiful positive feedback loop. So in that doc, the doc is really big and it's a little intimidating when you look at it first, but it's designed to be exhaustive. So we have people from, it's put together by people from UITS, from BIO5, the libraries, the engineering school for the machine learning and artificial intelligence, math, a bunch of, basically everyone who touches some amount of computing or any of those sort of things, and what they can provide. And each of the sections have a contact name, and then the last time they were updated, end of 2019 was when many of these things were updated. So we're going to be updating them again soon. The idea is to do it at least once a year. But it's really designed, again, to kind of look at all the options you have across all of campus and then copy and paste things that are interesting. And then you'll be able to reach out and either email or whatever contact information people put in and say, hey, I'm putting together a grant. This is the section that interested me. Can you tell me more about that? What are the details, et cetera. I spend a lot of my day being a signpost. And so I just decided to kind of do a brain dump and then talk to everyone that I knew that was involved. So I've now inherited this task. Mike Bruck and Susan started it. Mike Bruck worked on it before me, and now I'm the next generation, I guess. So if you ever see anything on here that or something you don't see on here that exists, please contact me and I will talk to whoever provides those sort of things and keep expanding this list and try to keep this up to date. I'm involved with a fair amount of grants in a year as well. And I think I wrote 14 or 15 letters last year. So that I can provide those kind of services as well. And at some level or another, having all this stuff in kind of one place where we can, the facilities documents to me always are like the last little slap in the face, because you get done with your narrative and you get done with your budget and you get done with the 20 other supporting things, and then you have to get into like the 5 or 6 other supporting docs and it just feels kind of rough. So I'm trying to take some of the sting out of some of the latter docs.
So we sent one of these to Jared the other day. I see that he's on the call, but one of the things I do want to say that I think it's really important for people who work in sort of clinical domains, and some of these grants have options for clinical trials at the NIH. We talked a little bit, Chris Frost, you talked to me a little bit about the REDCap resources, because this is something I think that would really you know, buttress, bolster, support these grants, because if those ducks are in line, I'm just wondering, you know, I'm sure that's on your resource list, but I think just having sort of a seamless process for setting up red cap applications. I'm going to have to learn it, but you know, if there are ways to have people in place, I know we have people in statistical computing, we have people in, you know, analytics. Those things are important, but as far as, you know, building an infrastructure that's ready to go, it's basically akin to having a human subjects proposal approved. When you send that in with your NIH grant, you know, you can either write, well, it's in process, or you can say it's approved. You always, you know, go up a couple notches if it's been approved. So to have those red cap resources basically laid out and functional, I think that that's a tremendous help to supporting the strength of a grant. So if there are any resources available in that domain, I think it would help anyone working on clinical based studies.
I have a quick question about that. So these boilerplate documents, are the core facilities involved in putting these together as well?
Yes. So actually, let me follow up with JP real quick. The health sciences has put together it's not a strategic initiative anymore, but they have some funding for what was Initiative 5.3. Nirav Merchant is kind of leading that charge with ComIT and us, and of course the Data Science Institute. And the plan there is to actually create a data enclave, or data and analysis enclave that is for HIPAA and other kinds of controlled data. There's a great need for that on campus, and health sciences has recognized that. We're getting started this year, so it might take us some time, you know, a year or so to figure out what that looks like. We've done about 3 months of kind of homework over the end of last year to get prepared for this. But that would include things, I mean, of course, HIPAA, but also, you know, there's a lot of different data use agreements that are out there that often get in the way of doing exactly what you're describing. And they all come in their, you know, 95 flavors of Baskin Robbins. And so having like a common knowledge base, but also a place that is as compliant to all of those different things as humanly possible, or at least a place where we can be 100% sure it is or is not compliant with whatever flavor exists at the time. And that'll be my dog wanting to bark as soon as he hears me talk. So that's happening. You know, timelines we're still sorting out because we're still pretty early in that process, but you know, REDCap is going to be the place for clinical data forever, I think. I mean, I don't know, I'm not involved in that or know anything more about REDCap, but this is sort of like the other side of it. The idea too is also have computing attached to that so that you're not moving your data around and like having to jump through hoops and figure out where to go, when, how. Data transfer when I was a researcher was like the hardest and worst thing, and seemingly the biggest waste of time. And I still feel that way. So, you know, it has a few different aspects, but ideally it would be a single place where people can be sure that this is where you can put data. You don't have to move it around. You can do your work on it as well right there. And then Nirav and others are attaching a honest broker system to sort of clean up data and get that out to other places as well. So it's got a couple of little octopus arms on this thing, so it'll be a little complex to set up, but that is one of our biggest pushes this year. Sorry, Richard, as for your question, the core facilities, so there's about 100 different flavors of core facilities. I think RII alone has 86 or somewhere in that ballpark. And so I work with Jason Pototsky, who's in charge. He manages all the core facilities, and he and I talk daily, if not weekly. And there is common infrastructure across those cores that we present to fit, like as far as facilities and things go. But really, RII and their core facilities page is probably the best place for each of the functions of the core facilities, right? Like if you wanted to go to one of the microscopy core facilities, it's probably best to go to their website and get their services directly from them. Trying to put 100 different core facilities in this doc would also be kind of overwhelming, because it would turn it from 30 pages into 60 or more probably. But yeah, we absolutely point researchers to different facilities, and there's just so many different ones. It becomes a little hard to, it really does come down to what you need. But Jason's a good contact, and I believe they do have a section here, and it's just like labeled RII core facilities. But if it's not, then I'll make sure that Jason puts that in the doc.
Can I jump in just a moment? This is Noah Curtis. I'm the manager for business analytics for core facilities. So Jason Petotsky, he manages the IT portion of core facilities. So my understanding of the question was whether there was a place to find essentially non-IT services. And at this point in time, really the best place to go is the iLab search page. And the reason that's so great, and I put a link to it in the chat. The reason that's great is that all of the different services, the different individual pieces of instrumentation that are located in iLab in the core facilities are on that page. And they're all tagged with different metadata tags. So if you're looking for mass spec, you can just search mass spec, and it will pull up a list of all the instruments that have been tagged with that are in the cores. I will admit that currently this is limited primarily to the core facilities that are managed by RII, but this year I've requested additional TRIF funding and been approved for it to cover a site-wide license for all of U of A. So any facility on the U of A campus can now implement iLab, and they'll be searchable through this database. So it's going to be a big task getting everyone in there, but eventually I'm looking to be able to provide the entire campus with a tool where they can search not just fee-for-service instruments and services, but potentially even free ones if we want to get them loaded in. So hopefully this will be a one-stop shop down the road.
That's really exciting, Noah. I'm glad to hear that. Kate put in the link off of the RII site to the core facilities search. So I'm a little curious what the difference there is. I think the RII site includes a lot of non-iLabs, right? But it probably doesn't let you search for equipment.
Yeah, so there are two fundamental differences here. The RII site is managed by web programmers and essentially the RII communications team. And so there's a lot of lag between the data that's put in there, but it does include a lot of non-RII facilities. iLab is essentially a search function that's driven through what essentially amounts to Etsy shops that are across campus, where people are trying to sell you services and tell you what's available. So it's very actively managed. So everything you find in there it's running, it's functional, it's got somebody standing behind it and ready to help you as a service. So those are the two distinctions that I would point out.
Noah, I have a quick, I'm ignorant of iLab question. Are there good descriptions in iLab that could go into something like a facilities and resources document?
That's a really fantastic question. And the answer, I'm going to go back to my accounting roots. It depends, right? Because iLab is really just a related database. So it depends on what the people put in. So for the RII managed cores, we worked very hard to try and include that kind of information in there so that it would be more useful. And I'm looking to kind of provide a picket fence with the funding for the site-wide license, where if somebody looks to implement, they need to provide that same data just to get the most utility out of it. But it's all a work in progress, right? But at the very least, it'll point you to the facility and get you a contact for the facility, and then you can reach out to them for more specific information if you need it.
Great. So that kind of goes back to the idea of, wanting to find collaborators and wanting to find capabilities. And so I think this is fantastic because for too long it's been, I was here for 10 years and then discovered that, just down the hall from me was a fabulous facility that I could have been using, back in the dark days. Things are getting better now.
Right. Yeah, we're trying to remove the degrees of separation between the people and the resources here on campus, and that's really what I'm aiming to do here. The other initiative that I'm trying to include with the funding is just to have a downloadable PDF of the facilities, how you would, basically formatted like you would include it in an NIH grant. And then that'll help you all. It'll also help our facility managers from having to field quite so many emails in a day.
Mhm. Great. All right. So what other challenges do you have or things could you use? What would be helpful for you?
Well, I want to just quickly chime in on that stream of conversation, just to say that I've already included the core facilities in the equipment and facilities document that I've submitted for a grant, and have found the two core facilities that I've spent most time with, the mass spec facility and genetics core, to be really receptive to providing sort of whatever help they need or I need, but also providing support letters. In my case for NSF, it's just a boilerplate one sentence, we'll support you if funded sort of thing, but talking through the resources that they have, how we can leverage them, and even in both cases, thinking about how to go beyond what I was thinking. So, a plug for both of those cores. And I don't have experience with all the other, what sounds like many cores. But certainly my experience thus far has been really positive working with them. Yeah.
Great. Glad to hear that, Chris.
And I guess I'll keep going and follow up, because I'll throw out a question as someone who's new, who's had some grant writing success in the past, but can also give you a pretty large bucket of my rejected grants. I think it's very helpful to have resources for not just finding funding opportunities, but opportunities to learn from people about how to pitch grant ideas. So, whether it be a one-page white page of what your idea is, or the nitty-gritty details of how different people structure different specific aims. And so I'm curious what people's experiences are vis-a-vis broad group opportunities in that framework here.
Becca, Amy, is there anything available centrally, or would this mostly go through people's departments?
So last year, even when the pandemic was going on, Jess Moon, and who's since moved on, and I did a 10-week R01 writing workshop in the midst of it, and then we had to move it remote. But it was primarily focusing on new investigators and early faculty, because there's been a need there. Now, Amy Jo and I have also made the argument, from what we've seen, that we feel like a lot of people would like help, right, with specific aims or best practices or different approaches that work. And so we're trying to we're testing something out about rigor and reproducibility, and then hope to make that available, but I don't know when. So the problem with this is we love programming, but there's only myself and Amy Jo, and Amy Jo is technically hired for data sciences. So I wrangled her over, and I've not let her go since. So it's about a manpower kind of thing. But you can always reach out to us, at a departmental level, and we can talk about that. So that's like, we give talks to the College of Nursing. That's what we're doing rigor and reproducibility for. And then if we find there's a larger need, then we can definitely scale that up. I think it's great when you have a group, right? And you tell us your need, and then we can even have informal, or we can prepare something for you too. So don't ever hesitate to reach out to myself or Amy Jo, and then kind of tell us what you're thinking or where you're seeing a need, right, with your faculty, yourself, and what you would like a little bit more training or assistance with. And that helps us know, is it just specific to you, or is it at large, right? And then where we can try to funnel resources, aka manpower. So yeah, just reach out to me. Happy to help.
That's really good to hear. I mean, so the one thing that I always find when I start writing grants is that as much as I think I know something, someone else almost always has an idea that I hadn't thought about, and an experience that I hadn't had that helps structure how I would ask a particular question or frame a particular question. And so that's the learning opportunity that I think we gather from sort of group interaction. So I appreciate that there's a sort of a centralized, that you sort of are forming a centralized element that says, hey, here's a resource that, you know, reach out to us. So I appreciate that very much.
That's no problem. Another thing I wanted to add was that we also encourage, you know, within your own units and everything too, try to get people that can look at people's stuff at different stages, right? The more feedback, the better, because it's great to use us. And like, I help people with specific aims, even if they're just going to have a conversation with the program officer, right? But then the more feedback you can get for the exact reasons that you said is the better way to go. So Amy Jo, did you want to add to that too? I saw you in.
Yeah, I think another aspect of that that people are interested in is sort of what is the different approach between different types of sponsors. Say you're very familiar with NIH, but you are less familiar with how to really write the NSF style grant, or you know, just even the differences between that and a foundation grant or something like that. So we're also interested in bringing in, highlighting those differences and ways that you can approach those based on the different criteria and the fundamental differences between those. And then we're also, I'd be interested in working with people too who are not really, who would like some feedback on their aims when they're thinking about a solicitation, for example, but are not pressed for actually applying to the, you know, to the sponsor. So more of like, hey, I have this idea, here's a draft, and I'd like to maybe bring in other folks as well who have an interest maybe in that similar mechanism or sponsor, and then just sort of do a writing group. And I know Becca just mentioned she worked with Jessica on the writing group. But I think working with specific drafts is very helpful in getting that different perspective, but without that time pressure. Hey, this is due in 2 months or whatever. So we're interested in helping facilitate that. How it happens exactly is more on the smaller scale with different, you know, smaller groups. So we're working on offering more of that.
Yeah, I want to echo that. So there's a lot of times, you know, like leadership will push the large things, but where I've seen the most successes with that more hands-on feedback is exactly what I said, smaller groups, and where you can really get that kind of iterative feedback too, right? So I'm not just looking at it at a point in time. And so, and that's cool too, would be like, hey, if you've scheduled us, even as an individual, to look at it, I'm gonna take your feedback from the aims, Becca, before I do this. So this just happened, right? And then I've got a couple solicitations, but I'm a bioengineer and I'm not sure which solicitation, or is this what they're looking for? So let's make it as good as it can be. Then go talk. Actually, it wasn't a good fit, but they told me 2 other solicitations and this one fits or whatever too. So what Amy Jo is saying, that's great, because then you've already talked to the program officer. You know that you fit that solicitation. It's not saying you're going to be funded, but you've already done, you've already gotten over that first hurdle too. So there's no guessing game. So yeah, just reach out to us. We're always happy to help.
Amelia, do you want to talk about your experience that you put in the chat?
Thanks, Jennifer. Yeah, it's really interesting. We just came from a research Senate meeting this morning in Phoenix, and I had proposed the exact same thing. So in the past, we had workshop that we call the Specific Games Workshop. Any faculty could sign up, or even postdocs, to run your specific games by a group and get a sort of a NIH study section style feedback. It kind of fizzled because maybe just, you know, these things sort of go through phases, but I am finding myself more and more wanting that kind of feedback as I'm now trying to revise what I had submitted as a supplement award application, and decide, you know, should I put it in as an R21? Can I expand it to an R01? It's a new area. It's going into Alzheimer's disease. That's not previously been my work. And I would love to get, you know, some outside people to just give me a little feedback and to brainstorm. And that's like the thing that we all went into science for, is we loved brainstorming with colleagues. So if there were a mechanism maybe to, people have organized, you know, writing groups, could we organize small, you know, grant feedback groups if it's too much for people to do in a large scale thing? So I love what's been proposed. I would love to follow up on it.
Great. Let's follow up. I'd love to hear more about, you know, I think the devil's in the details on those kind of things, and how often they meet, and, you know, whether you have one cycle or if it's just a pool of people who are there and able, and would love to follow up on that. And one other comment I saw here, yeah, JP, you had actually put in, is it appropriate to build an archive of successful grant proposals behind U of A firewall with agreement to keep in confidence? This is another thing I think that's come up over the years, and I think maybe the challenge there is exactly how you implement that. It's easy enough to talk to your colleagues who, you know, by the way, you know, it's pretty simple to go to NIH or NSF website and see who's been funded. And so you can find your colleagues and you can reach out to them directly. And most of the time, my impression is that people are pretty happy to share their successfully funded proposals. But trying to do it on an institutional level has been a little hairy. I know when I was in the research office, we never did figure out how to do it. Becca or Amy Jo, I don't know if there's been any movement on that.
I can kind of speak to this just a little bit. So when we were teaching in the writing workshop, this came up over and over again from new investigators. And what Jennifer said was reach out to your colleagues and do this. We sometimes get permission to share things, but it's not going to happen. Even within our unit, our colleagues, Amy Jo and I do to help each other, you know, but we don't share. We don't have a database even within RDS. For better or worse, we do not have a database within RDS, right, Amy Jo? So
yeah,
I understand your frustration.
We do have access to, you know, all of the submissions, but certainly we're not at liberty to share any of those things through sponsored projects. One challenge in sharing proposals, you know, aside from, hey, you got permission, is just simply, you know, I've seen a lot of proposals where you're giving feedback from updated guidance, and they're using a proposal that's maybe a couple years old even, and it just doesn't have the same requirements necessarily, or you know, falls in line with some of the new things that are coming out. For example, like putting in a preparation for some of the NIH proposals for contingency plans related to COVID, for example. So, you know, that's kind of a funny thing sometimes when we're looking at those previous proposals. They could be beneficial on one hand and then obstacles on others. So yeah, I guess it's just a touchy subject altogether in terms of privacy and all of your work that, you know, so.
Yeah, but I would absolutely encourage you to look and see who at the university has been funded under the same or similar mechanism, or even at the same institute at the NIH or whatever, and reach out to them, because most people are quite willing to help.
One of the things that I think, I mean, if we're not willing to share the funded grants, if people sit on study sections, you know, I've talked to people about what flies in the study section because, you know, that's work that they do, you know, that's work that they sometimes do essentially pro bono. But if there are a list of people at the university who sit on these sections, I think we might be able to float things to them. You know, I think that's one thing. The other thing I think that's really important is that new investigators understand that their first time around for an R01 in the case of the NIH, there will be some, you know, people will cut them some slack. So I think when they submit that aspect, their biosketch, they have to have that in there. This is my first R01. So if we really have sort of a cadre of people who have, you know, expertise as in study section, you know, deliberations, that might be something that might be a resource that would not require us to ask people for their funded grants if they're not willing.
Yeah, and that's the type of thing that should be showing up in UA Vitae. I think then it's a matter of how public you make that. For
Okay.
instance, I sit on NIBIB Council. So speaking of these getting, you know, RFAs put out with a month, you know, usually the people who are involved with the agencies have some inclination of things that are coming down the pipeline. And so it'd be nice to share that. Just a couple minutes left. Blake, thank you for putting up on the chat. Take a look about a shut up and write. I like that. Okay, right to the point about getting together. And I didn't know that Rebecca was involved in that. So that's great. We're learning here. In the last 2 minutes, any last question from anybody? I think what we're hearing is that there's a community here that can help you. Reach out, and maybe just as we finish up, Becca or Amy Jo, do you know what programming is on the docket for RDS this year? Do you want to put in any plugs for anything that's going to come up? Are you running the career series again, or anything like that?
Yeah, some of that is obviously still being developed, and some of the challenges of being remote and everything, and people being burnt out on Zoom a bit. But we are putting together the early career workshop for NSF for early stage investigators, essentially, and that'll be coming out soon. So we'll make sure that everyone interested in that, even if it's across a different realm for you, gets access to that. Becca, do you know of any NIH stuff that maybe coming
Yeah,
up?
are we doing the thing with Libby from Lewis Burke where she's going to talk about new investigators? That's in February. It's I don't know if registration's available. What do you remember what that's called, Amy Jo? Oh, she disappeared for a second.
Oh,
There's
sorry,
something.
no.
Do you remember what that's called?
This is just going to be an introduction to NIH mechanisms, and really kind of going through the process for your career timeline, in a sense, from what you should be looking at as an early investigator to maybe how you're planning for that on down the road. And Libby has been with NIH previously, and now she works sort of in a lobbying capacity for the university, and they provide us with resources and information on what kind of federal funding is coming our way, and keeps us privy to that stuff. So she will be a great resource.
And I'm doing for Jenny Hoyt, who is the director of postdoctoral affairs. I'm doing a talk, I think in March, I don't have the exact date, but on F awards and other mechanisms for postdocs and as they transition. And then Amy Jo and I are trying to figure out what other programming, but if that is needed, that is driven from you, right? That's not driven from above, but that is driven from bottom up. And so what I saw Amy Jo just put it in the chat. So yeah, please let us know. So like Amelia, you were saying about the specific aims, something that's great. Any ideas about programming, send them to Amy Jo and myself, And it will really get us to start think about, okay, what can we be doing? And so we're trying to figure out the rest, but you can see January, February, March is a little busy with programming with NIH, but that doesn't mean that April, May, or June, we can't get something scheduled, especially if it's not like huge scale, right? But we could try to do something smaller as well. So we're always open. We're really flexible too, so.
Right. Well, thank you, Becca and Amy Jo, for being here, and Kim for being here at the beginning. And thank you all. It's great to see your faces. Take care and hope to see you at the next one of these. All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you.